You're listening to Vancouver Co-op Radio, CFRO 100.5 FM. We're here on the unceded traditional territory of the Salish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. This is Bernadine Fox, here with my co-host for the week, Don Wright, bringing you Both Sides Now. Today, Don Wright and I will be speaking with Aiden Scott, who is a mental health advocate and the founder of Speakbox, an app to assist mental health consumers succeed in their healing work. He is a fascinating guy, so stay tuned. We will be right back.
Join us every Monday from 2:30 to 4 p.m. for She Boom. Open your ears to the sound of the latest and greatest women in music. Our show focuses entirely on female artists, from a local to global perspective. Every Monday from 2:30 to 4 p.m., tune in to She Boom on CFRO 100.5 FM Co-op Radio.
So we're in the studio with Aiden Scott, who is a mental health advocate, and I think you said you're patient and family advisor at BC Children's. Did I get that right?
Yes.
And you're also the co-founder and CEO of Speakbox, which we're going to talk about in a bit. But I got to see you on a TED Talk, and that was lovely to watch you. You have a lot to say about mental health issues, and why do you want to work around mental health as an advocate?
I enjoy working as an advocate because I like to think I can bring some normalcy to the conversation. I think there's a lot of media coverage that often focuses on the dark and the dirty and the dangerous.
Sensational.
Absolutely. I sometimes joke that I'm a terrible news story because nobody wants to tell the positive mental health story.
Right.
Everybody wants to talk about the dark mental health story
Right.
because that gets clicks. And so for me in advocacy, I take a very light-hearted approach to a serious topic mixed with a mild amount of dark humor, which I think any of us in the lived experience community can somewhat relate to, that humor does get us through the day sometimes, as long as it doesn't go to an extreme. But yeah, just talk about it normally.
Yeah.
Not pathologize it, not over-clinicalize it, just we're people and we have diverse experiences, and some of us got dragged through the gutter.
Mm-hmm.
And
some of us are neurologically different.
Absolutely. There's the genetic side to
Yes.
it, and we can't ignore that.
No.
I think what's exciting about mental health right now is because of the increased focus that it's getting, the new research that's coming forward, the greater public understanding that's coming forward, is actually it's created the space to have a more normalized conversation about it.
Yes.
It's not this oddity anymore. It's much more understood. And I think that's a credit to advocates and voices and just the conversation as a whole. Stigma is reducing publicly.
I think so.
Yeah.
There also has been a great deal of peer-run support in Vancouver up until a couple years ago. It was well-funded, and so places like the West Coast Mental Health Network had a lot of peer-run groups. The Mental Patients Association, that doesn't call themselves anymore, the MPA Society.
Mm-hmm.
Gallery Gachet.
Love Gallery Gachet.
Me too, on the board. And there's another one, I can't remember, but there are a lot of places that provide space for mental health consumers to be able to have social experiences with each other and therefore be able to, what's the word? They get to be able to share what's true for them and realize that it's not this big, hairy deal. It's just that they're different. And so that's where the humor comes in and the fun, and it lightens the whole thing a lot.
Stand Up for Mental Health, great group as well.
Actually,
Speaking
David.
of humor,
yes.
David's group is
Jan Derbyshire. We're trying to get
hilarious
Jan.
and effective.
Yes.
I've been to a couple of their shows. I laugh still.
Well, that's because it's funny.
It's funny.
It's just funny. And it's, it's really doesn't do anybody any good, in my opinion, to make this some kind of big, dark, sensational thing when in fact the people with lived experiences aren't experiencing it like that for the most part.
I look at it like the cancer community. I mean, such a heavy thing, of course.
Right.
Cancer and the loss of life, and seeing people in the community lose their lives to cancer is difficult, but there is also incredible love and compassion and joy within that community. The
Right.
survivor camaraderie
Right.
that comes up within
Right.
that. And I think that's growing within the mental health community, primarily because we all understand how many gaps there are in mental health, and so the community itself has actually rallied. And
Yes.
I think that's why peer support has actually proliferated so much, because a lot of people just frankly can't access some of the traditional resources because it's not public health funded.
I agree, but the problem with peer-run support right now is that it's desperately unfunded.
Yes.
And so it makes the programs like this very much more valuable. So in our studio today as well is Don Wright. Say hi, Don.
Hello out there, radio land.
And of course, Don is the founder of the BC Society for Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse.
This for 30 years, and I'm kind of at the point of retirement now.
Yes.
But that means I joined the board.
You joined the board, yes.
Yes. No
And
longer paid.
And I know when we talked, Aiden, you talked about having traumatic experiences in your history. How has that informed what you're doing as a mental health advocate?
Yeah, so I do have a history of childhood sexual abuse. I was a consumer of BC male survivors, actually, and they were a great tipping point and a great knowledge gain for me in how to cope with the overwhelming feelings that come with experiencing trauma. But for me as an advocate, where trauma has informed me in a lot of ways is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which was my central diagnosis, has so many crossovers with other areas of mental illness. So within the mental health community, as an advocate, there's a lot of common understanding that I could have for a lot of different individuals, whether it be struggling with depression or anxiety or an eating disorder. All of these things just get mashed up when we have complex PTSD.
Yes.
I often joke that complex PTSD is probably the worst name.
Yes, it
It was
is.
a bunch of psychiatrists sat down in a room and was like, we can't give people 8 diagnoses. That's weird. So why are these particular population members getting, why?
Yes.
And then they're like, oh,
We'll
because
just-
they went through trauma for multiple years through many developmental stages, and
Right.
here's kind of the end result of what's happening.
So we'll just add a C to PTSD.
Yeah, so
Well,
it's
the difference is the age of onset, which is usually early on when they're still forming their world paradigm, and then it's protracted over a longer period of
Yes.
time, where if you're 16 years old and you get assaulted by your coach, you already have a sense of self. You've already got your personality in place. And so not to say that isn't traumatic, but not nearly so much as if it happened when you were 5 and then at 6 and at 7.
Yes. Multiple people.
Yeah.
Multiple places in your life.
Yeah.
Yes. So complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes. So
Yes.
it led me down a lot of different paths, connected me to a very broad range of the mental health community. And that then just fed more knowledge. I think as an advocate and a public speaker and working in the space, what I love about it isn't so much, I don't like to hear myself speak so much. It's, I like to be involved in these different opportunities because I learn through them and I grow through them.
Yes.
I go and talk at a high school in front of a classroom, and the questions that they throw back to me, that is as learning for me as anything I say to them. And so it's really a mutual benefit that gets created, which I think is really
Yeah.
exciting.
And I think it's also true for every teacher-student scenario. It's just not many teachers like you actually admit that. So thank you.
I think it's important because as soon as you think you know it all, you can stop being good at what you're doing. You have to continue to have an open mind and be receptive, because not everybody's experience is the same. So you have to really understand the variations.
So one of the things that we talked about previously around the male survivors of sexual assault was that they needed to have their own space because their issues were different than that of females. Did you find that before you arrived at that society? Did you have difficulties finding services prior to that?
I would say the first part I found difficulty finding services was just trauma specialized services in general. And then absolutely being a male, having experienced trauma, when I did find trauma services, they were generally for female counterparts.
Right.
And so they were just restricted. I just was unable to access them. And so support was very limited in that context. So something like BC Male Survivors, of course, fills that very large gap in a much needed and very necessary way. I think the biggest thing about it, I mean, Dawn would know best. I'm curious if the therapeutic approach differs very much as the spaces themselves create safety in a population that I recognize I was very vulnerable when I was. I cannot understate that. When I started talking about it, I was on that threshold of probably not being fully in on needing to get well again.
Right.
And there was still a lot of conflict with me. I remember many sessions that did not end well.
Oh.
But they were necessary, and I grew, and my care teams were very patient with me. And then there came a point that, to Dawn's point, on, I was learning that as a patient, I got to a point where I started to just have therapeutic dialogue with my therapist, and that wasn't very productive. I mean, it was entertaining.
What is therapeutic dialogue?
So, when I'm going into session and spending more time talking about the concept or the therapeutic approach.
Oh, the theory.
The theory.
You got into your head.
Then actually
to stay
talking
away from
about
all that stuff over there.
Absolutely. So I spent more time in theory than actually working on what I actually needed. What was my priority for that week? What did I want to get to? What did I want to move to from going through this journey of recovery and treatment and learning and understanding? And so I got really stuck. I was about 21. I would say 21 was like my prime stuck year. And it actually required me to step away from the routine of therapy and then go and challenge myself to act on the tools that I'd been taught, to actually put them into context, not just have this big book of skills.
As much as you spent all that time basically in theory, might seem like you wasted time, but I suspect that's what you needed for your healing process. That's what I find with a lot of people who are going through trauma as a support person from the outside, is that whatever they're doing is exactly what they needed to do for that particular moment, for however long they needed to do it.
Absolutely, yeah, not a waste of time. I'm an analytical person by nature, and so truly understanding the science side of mental health was really important to me, versus necessarily just sort of taking the skill and applying the skill. I needed to know the science behind the skill. Why was my brain really doing what it was doing? So I could, for me, that actually filled my void of control. And I was speaking with a lot of others who've gone through abuse. That's a very core element, is how do you regain healthy control in life through whatever, usually it's a passion, or it might be work, or it's in healthy relationships and things like that. But that you have that stability and you have that balance, and that you feel that you now have ownership of your life again. Because for me, abuse robbed me of my ownership while I was a child and an adolescent.
Your sense of control.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We're going to take a little break. We'll be right back after The Mad Hatter by Melanie Martinez.
Skinny dipping rabbit holes for fun. Popping balloons with guns. Getting high off helium. We paint white roses red. Each shade from a different person said this dream is a killer. Getting drunk with a blue caterpillar. I'm peeling the skin off my face, 'cause I really hate being safe. The normals, they make me afraid. The crazies, they make me feel sane. I'm nuts, baby, I'm mad. The craziest friend that you've ever had. You think I'm psycho, you think I'm gone. psychiatrist, something is wrong. Over the bed, entirely bonkers. You like me best when I'm off my rocker. Tell you a secret, I'm not alarmed. So what if I'm crazy? The best people are. All the best people are crazy. All the best people are. Where is my prescription? Doctor, doctor, please listen. My brain is scattered. You can be Alice, I'll be the Mad Hatter. I'm peeling the skin off my face, 'cause I really hate being safe. The normals, they make me afraid. The crazies, they make me feel sane. I'm nuts, baby, I'm mad. The craziest friend that you've ever had. You think I'm psycho, you think I'm gone. Tell the psychiatrist something is wrong. Over the bed, entirely bonkers. You like me best when I'm off my rocker. Tell you a secret, I'm not alarmed. So what if I'm crazy? The best people are. You think I'm crazy, you think I'm gone. So what if I'm crazy? All the best people are. And I think you're crazy too. I know you're gone. It's probably the reason that we get along. Nuts, baby, I'm mad. The craziest friend that you've ever had. You think I'm psycho, you think I'm gone. Tell the psychiatrist something is wrong. Over the bed, entirely bonkers. You like me best when I'm off my rocker. Tell you a secret, I'm not alarmed. So what if I'm crazy? The best people are. All the best people are crazy. All the best people are. All the best people are crazy. All the best people are.
You're listening to Both Sides Now. I'm Bernadine Fox, here with Dawn Wright, talking with mental health advocate Aiden Scott.
So, how does all that fit into Speakbox, this app that you've created?
So I created Speakbox out of what I was saying earlier around enabling capacity and access. So often in mental health, people delay receiving services, usually because of a wait list, or it could be a financial barrier, or it could be a stigma barrier. All of these barriers are, we can knock them down. There's nothing stopping us from knocking down any of those barriers. And so when we created Speakbox, we wanted to address the root causes of those. So the app that's on iOS and Android right now, it's in its early days. We admit that. We are very community driven, so we gather feedback from the community and we use that feedback to continue to drive the platform. But we wanted to give them not necessarily a clinical practice specific. So it's not a cognitive behavioral therapy app. It's not a dialectal behavioral therapy app or anything specific to that. It does core habit features. So things like daily health check-ins. Where would you rate your health quality today? And then it logs that so that you can see, am I trending upwards for the week? Am I trending down? What's going on this week? It provokes reflection. And we think that's really, really important. And so that's the first side of the platform that's out right now. And then the second side that we want to tackle is relationships. It's collaboration. And we recognize that in healthcare, what's actually happening right now is a renaissance in digital technology. There's an enormous amount of effort being put into this. More transparent, more accessible patient data. Going back to those barriers and reducing barriers, mental health has been somewhat slow to adopt, not to its fault, but because a lot of the technology is generalist. It's not really designed for specialists like psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals. And so what we're seeing is this second wave of digital technology where we're seeing specialized technologies developed. And that's what Speakbox is doing for mental health professionals. Is we want to give them a unique toolbox so that they can manage their practice, that they can ultimately build stronger relationships, because one of the root challenges that I faced in our reach outs to hundreds of individuals, it's hard to take what is discussed in 50 minutes of therapy and apply it to the 1 to 2 weeks gap between sessions. The
Right.
real work, much like physiotherapy, is outside the office.
That's correct.
And so if our app can help reinforce those things that were talked about in session and help that person feel that they're not so far away, they're not so detached from their clinician, then our theory is that we could actually get some better results, that we can actually improve their engagement, we can have them feel more empowered about their care, and then once their clinical relationship resolves, they can actually hold on to that learning and that data. It's no longer in a sticky note or a notebook, it's actually on their phone. It has a permanent record in the cloud, safely and securely in the cloud, in Canada, where if something happens in the future, then they can reshare that. And that was your question earlier, how did my trauma influence Speakbox?
Yes.
That was a big one. The fact that if I can own my personal health data and be in control of that and share that, the fact that I wouldn't have to repeat my history as often when accessing healthcare services is harm reducing.
Yes.
Right.
I
Yeah, a
agree.
lot of people have a problem having to tell their story over and over again to new therapists or new lawyers or new Crown Counsel. It gets wearisome for a while.
Yeah.
This week.
So the other thing I know is that there are therapists now who are working via text. Crisis lines you can access via text and by Skype and by phone. So would your app eventually go that far that people would be conducting therapy over it, or are you remaining as a sort of a record-keeping, exercise-giving kind of phase from what Speakbox is right now?
We're certainly considering it. It's not on our short-term map, but definitely telemedicine and telehealth is a very exciting field. Again, to our core mission of health unobstructed, it's breaking down those barriers.
There clearly is so much potential for what you're doing. I really appreciate it from a mental health advocate's position myself. So thank you very much, Aiden. It's been brilliant sitting here talking with you.
We're excited.
You're listening to Vancouver Co-op Radio 100.5 CFRO. We are a non-commercial station bringing you voices and stories and perspectives you probably won't hear elsewhere. We are supported by members and by donations. You can become a member by going to our website at www.coopradio.org. If you like what you hear but don't want to be a member, that's cool too. You can still help by clicking on the donate arrow at the top right of the website. Co-op Radio thanks you for listening and for helping build our community of listeners and programmers.
We're fortunate here on Both Sides Now to have Gallery Gachet come and chat with us about their upcoming event, the Mad Banquet, a part of their Mad Pride events that has included an exhibition that is up until July 27th at 9 West Hastings here in Vancouver, BC.
Can you tell me what Gallery Gachet is?
Gallery Gachet was created as a peer-driven model of a gallery space where the people that are the mental health consumers actually run the space, as opposed to some organization that is run from the top down. This one's run from the bottom up, which is a very unique model, and I don't think there's many places, if any, in the rest of Canada that are quite as unique and exceptional as Gachet actually is.
It is exceptional. And one of your mandates at Gallery Gachet is to, it's a collectively run exhibition and studio space, but you work to demystify and work with stigma around mental health issues, right?
That's right. It's also like there's a lot of stigmata, as you said, that's attached to mental health issues, like, oh, you have a mental health issue? Oh no, like you're going to pull out a weapon and use it on somebody. There's quite a bit of stigmata there, and I think it's more accurate to say that actually pretty much everybody, if you look around yourself, almost everyone has got a mental health issue. A lot of people suffer from chronic depression, and they still manage to somehow work, in the 9-to-5 world. But actually, it's much more common than you think. So
Yes, actually 1 in 5 people in Canada have a mental health issue.
yeah, and so, we're not talking everybody has bipolarism, or I think that the most common one really is just depression, and in a way that's a very sane reaction to an insane world, which is the
Yes.
premise behind Mad Pride, you know.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Mad Pride. So where did Mad Pride come from? So I do know it's a worldwide event that happens around this time throughout Canada and the United States.
Mad Pride happens, I believe it's on the 14th of July, worldwide, and it's like a celebration of the madness that actually makes the world colorful and amazing, and the uniqueness of people. Artists might be even more susceptible to the madness than the average person, because we are so much more sensitive and I think psychic and open in other forms, and that's what allows us to do our best work.
Right.
And that is a form of sing along the edge of madness, right? Van Gogh, you know, I believe it was, he cut off an ear
And killed himself.
and killed himself, you
Yes.
know, and he was considered mad, right? And his doctor was Gachet, and that's why
Yes.
our studio, or our gallery, calls itself Gallery Gachet, actually.
So tell me about the Mad Banquet.
The Mad Pride Mad Honey is something that we do annually, and it's in conjunction with the World Mad Pride. And this year the theme was Mad Honey.
Why Mad Honey?
Well, because we were talking about, for example, like from our collective hive, we puzzle over poison, medicine, madness, sweetness, and intoxication. And in fact, there is in nature a form of mad honey, which is actually a psychoactive wild honey that's transformed from the pollen of just a few rare rhododendron species
Really?
from the Caucasus and the Himalayan mountain ranges. And it can be a natural remedy, or it can be a paralyzing toxin.
Well, and that's
So-
true for just about any medicine out there. Medicine can work for one person, it can drive another person insane.
Absolutely.
So where is this Mad Banquet happening?
In conjunction with the Mad Honey exhibition, we're having a small garden party, and
Right.
we're calling it the Mad Banquet, and it's going to be happening at 312 Main Street from 2 to 4 p.m. in the Chandelier Room. You will need to make an RSVP,
And how do they do that?
and you can do that. You can email the programming at gachet.org, or you can just phone them, 604-687-2468.
And there's some indication here that people need to come in costume, but everybody is welcome. So if somebody is too shy to come in costume, like I might be, are they still allowed to come? Or
Yeah, no, you can still come.
okay,
But we are definitely wanting to encourage people, you know, being dressed up could be just wearing a really crazy hat.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Or just
Absolutely.
a wild, crazy coat.
or a bow tie,
Yeah.
or a mask. Even if you're really shy, you could wear a mask, I suppose. Hey,
Yes.
that sounds like fun. So that is on July 15th, 2 to
Yes.
4. And if anybody's interested in going, just send them an RSVP to programming@gachet.org or call them at 604-687-2468. Thank you so much for coming in.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.
A really quick roundup. Thanks to Aiden Scott from Speakbox for coming in and chatting with us about this new app. It's available for both iOS and Android platforms. Thanks to Don for coming in and co-hosting with me. And thanks to Gallery Gachet for sending someone in to talk about your Mad Banquet. Check it out.
If you have questions or feedback about this program or want to share your story or have something to say to us, we want to hear from you. You can reach us by email, bowsidesnow@coopradio.org, or via Twitter @bowsidesnowbc. This is Bernadine Fox. We'll be back next week. Until then.
I can't seem to